Everybody, and welcome to Talking Real Estate, a Champions Real Estate team here at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Ambassador Real Estate Company. Thank you for joining us. So every Wednesday we jump on, give you a rundown of what's going on in the real estate market here in the Omaha metro area. Joining me as always is Russ Williams with Williams Mortgage. So he'll kind of give us the rundown of what's going on in the mortgage industry, but and keep us up to date on all that kind of fun stuff. So appreciate everyone joining us. So let's jump into the graphics that we use. So everyone kind of keep on tabs of what's going on. So snapshot view. So over the last 7 days, we've had 444 new listings go live in the Omaha metro area. That is, where do my numbers go? So we're up about 140 listings. We had about 300 new listings last week. So we're seeing more houses come on the market. Weather's getting nicer. We're into March. And then new contracts written is at 376. We're up about 100 new contracts written, so pending listings. So basically those same 100 houses that just came on more 100 houses that came on the market, basically we're almost a net zero, on that aspect of it. So 100 came on, 100 went off. And then the sold homes, basically indicative of what happened in the last 45 or so days, is at 405, and that's up another 100 houses from the previous week. So as we're seeing more activity, so we're seeing more houses come on the market, but we're also seeing those houses come off just as fast. So when we look at the next graphic, you'll take a look at kind of the 30,000 foot view here, and looking at months of inventory, where I think we were at about 2.4 last month. So this middle graphic here, and we're at two months of inventory. So even though we on the snapshot view, we had 100 more listings go live, those other houses came off the market because we had 100 more contracts written. Our months of our inventory went down. So that's what we look at is, people say we have low inventory. We do, but we don't, because we had 100 houses come on, 100 went off. So the numbers are kind of misleading in a way that if you looked at this and say, oh, 2 months of inventory, we actually had more. We had 2.4, but those all just went off like that over pretty much almost over the weekend. They were gone. So if you're looking to buy and sell, especially on the buy side, you got to jump in the market, even not just looking at, the little view of it, but there's always more houses coming on, rather than going, oh my gosh, there's only 1,900 houses in the Omaha Lincoln MLS, 1,100 houses in Douglas Sarpy County. And in the existing homes, about 282, we're down about 20 or 30 from the previous week. But, those houses are coming up and they're going off. But if you just looked at this graphic, as we have it posted on our social media, on my LinkedIn and Facebook and such, and go, oh, there's only 200 houses, but you didn't know that there's 100 more houses that came on this week than there was the previous week. So that's why, having an agent that's, knows these numbers day in and day out, of what's going on in the market and the big picture side of it, that's going to help you set the stage for you to get into a house. And then there's all the fun stuff that, that goes into writing that offer. And then the average sold price went up about $4,000 from the previous week. So we're up at 314, up about, just a little under 7% from the week prior, or from the year prior, for March of 2022. So, I think we've touched in previous weeks that we saw at this time last year, we were seeing 15%, 13% increases from the previous year. Where I think, we're kind of getting down to real life, what the market's doing, as far as appreciation goes, because we can't sustain, no market can sustain double-digit increases year over year over year. Where we're in the Omaha Metro, on average, we were about 3 to 5% average increase, over the lifespan, over the history. So we're kind of getting back down to those normal numbers, but we're still seeing those prices go up. Obviously interest rates are up a little bit, and then we can talk about refinancing and all that good stuff. So when we were looking at I guess when we were touching on the houses and making those offers, is one of the things that you hear some people talk about is appraisal gap coverage. So we'll kind of talk about that just a little bit, and Ruskin can jump in here if anything that he has to add. So basically appraisal gap coverage. So for example, if a house is listed at 250 and you write an offer at 270, you get an escalation clause, and it ladders itself up to that 270. And let's say the appraisal comes in at 260. There's a $10,000 gap between what the actual purchase price, the contracted price is. The 260 is the appraised price, basically what the lender is going to give you money for. And then you have a $10,000, what we call appraisal gap. Well, now some buyers, ultimately they have to have the cash to make up that gap, or $5,000 of that gap, $10,000 of that gap, or up to, a dollar amount, and then on top of their closing cost and their down payment. So that's one of those things from a seller's perspective, is you want to make sure that if the contract is written in that manner, you want to make sure you're working with an agent that has dealt with those type of contracts. First and foremost, you want to make sure that buyer is vetted, that they can actually perform on that contract, because they may say, oh yeah, we got, $50,000 to play with. Well, if all that's eaten up in down payment and, closing costs, they might not have that extra $10,000. So ultimately they'll come back to you and say, well, sorry, we can only buy the house for, that $260 of what the bank is going to give us. And you miss out on that potential $10,000 gap there. So it's just, there's a lot of different, mechanics in the aspect of it, in that regards. And so that's just one thing. I don't, Russ, do you have anything to add or, touch on?
I think that's excellent. It's interesting if you think about it, if buyers will think about it from the perspective of a seller, if there are multiple offers, it's not uncommon that we'll see escalations above that asking price. Nationwide, roughly 1 out of every 4 transactions is a cash transaction. I know it's amazing that there's that much money out there, but there is, which means if you're one of those buyers that's needing to use financing, it's important to understand that financing is based upon the lesser of purchase price or appraised value. So in those cases, as Mark mentioned, that we have the appraisal coming in below the purchase price, that appraisal gap issue comes into play. Certainly, if you've got some cash to cover that, that's great. There are things that can be done from a lending perspective also to help with appraisal gap. So make sure that your lender goes through those with you when you make an application, because right now, Mark, if you want to add to this, certainly, at least what we're seeing on the finance side is we're seeing a very competitive market, especially under the 350 to 400 price point. But if a home is priced well, it's not uncommon to see multiple offers, and that increases the odds that we might have those low appraisals that would result in appraisal gap. So make sure your lender goes through that with you up front. If they don't, give me a call.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just, you got to know the tools that you can have at your disposal, and working with agents, and lenders that are dealing with this day in and day out, and how to structure those offers to make your offer the most appealing to that seller, and as a listing agent, you need to understand how to navigate those waters and make sure that you do have the what's in the best interest of your seller. Ultimately, if the appraisal comes back a little lower than what that purchase price is, you can obviously do a rebuttal, an appeal on it. And, say you have 10 offers, because the buyers essentially determine the market, and then the bank comes back and says, well, okay, if we get this house back in a foreclosure, what can we sell it for that we're not going to lose out on it? Because I've had appraisers that I teach real estate continuing education classes. I've had appraisers that take the CE classes with me, and you ask them, like, well, we cannot appraise a house at auction prices. And that's what we were getting into, and we still are, is it's you get emotions involved in it, and buyers are going, well, that 250 house, well, I'll pay 285 for it. Well, yes, you may pay that for it, but do you have the gap to cover that? Because the bank's going to say, no, if we have to put this thing back on the market, we want to sell it within, what's our sale price within 30 days that we want it off our books. 285, they might not look at that and say, okay, well, I don't think we can do that, even though there's a buyer pool out there. But if you get, 10 offers on it, let's say, but 2 of them are racing up to the top, and you got, the other 8 of them that are, oh, well, I'll give you 260. I'll give you $10,000 more, and you get two people. All it takes is two people to get those escalation clauses going. And, as a seller, sometimes you just have to look back, and maybe that only appraises for, it's a 250, let's say craziness, it got up to 285, maybe it only appraises for 270. You're playing, in my mind, you're almost playing with house's money. Ultimately, as a seller's agent, we have a fiduciary responsibility to do what's in your, legally, to do what's in your best interest. We're going to try to get that as high as we can. But at some time, I've heard stories and worked with clients back and forth that, well, it's 285, but we're not selling the house. Well, you should kind of be happy if you get it at 270, 275, we listed it at 250, that was a good, fair price. But with the shortage, supply and demand, to simple economics, that the buyers may, push that price up there. I know I've seen houses that have had 30 plus offers on it. It gets crazy. At some point, there's the diminishing return on it, that you have all these offers that are the same, but you get a couple that'll ladder yourself up there. But I think, those appraisal gap is a good option, but ultimately you have to have that cash, because that's cash on top of your down payment. Just to make up that. So make sure that if you are working with an agent, say, well, I'll cover appraisal gap. There's other ways you can structure it as well, as maybe you're paying part of the seller's closing costs. So there's the seller also has closing costs that they incur when they sell a house. And so you could pay $10,000, up to $10,000. And so that purchase price could be $250,000. You're going to pay $10,000 of the seller's closing costs. That's going up to basically a $260,000, net offer to that seller. But since the purchase price is only at $250,000, the house only needs to appraise at $250,000. And plus on the seller side, the seller has to pay state dock tax, dock stamps. So that's $2.25 per thousand. So they're saving that, $225 on that. So that's a higher net to that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can structure an offer and look appealing to a seller by different ways that you can structure your offer. And working with agents here at Champions Real Estate Team, those are the tools we have in our toolbox to get you, that house. And sometimes I've had to explain, and make sure that listing agent completely understands our offer. That's the other thing is, working with many different agents, teaching real estate CE classes. I work with a bunch of different agents out there that, hey, this is how we're structuring the offer. If we can make it a different way, but ultimately this is what we have to work with, and you have that communication, open lines of communication with that agent to put you in the best position to ultimately win that offer, or at least get a seat at the table. I think that's the last couple, handful of years is just, let's get a counter back from that seller, so we have the option to say no. And I think that's something that agents, well, let's just put this here, say it out there. And then, I've gotten them before, you get the text message from the agent, the seller's agent, hey, appreciate your offer, good luck to your clients, but unfortunately went with a different offer, and you don't even get a chance to say, well, we would have done, a little more, this or that, because they've, essentially signed that contract on the other side. Well, if something happens or something falls through, we'll call you back. But, it's get a seat at that table is, closing costs, is it appraisal gap, there's a bunch of different tools in the toolbox that, Russ can go over on the financial side. I can go over on the kind of the contract negotiation side, to get into that house. And I think, like we said, we just saw 100 more houses come on the market, and in less than a week, those 100 houses are gone. Not exactly one for one, but 100 houses, new houses came on the market, an extra 100 houses were sold. So we're starting to see that activity pick up, and it's, first weekend of March. And I don't necessarily see it slowing down, barring any crazy events that, Russ or I can never, can't predict or see coming. But yeah, so I think that's just one of the tools that we talked about. I guess there were a couple. We talked about closing cost and appraisal gap. But I guess on that note, how are rates doing so we can get these contracts written and get some people into the houses and get them.
We're a little high on the rates right now. And a lot of that is because of concern that the Fed is still expressing with inflation. And we do, of course, expect as the year goes on, we've talked about this, for those rates to improve a little bit, which again, marry the house, state the rate. As these rates are high, there are folks that go to the sideline and they wait for rates to come down, which means when those rates, if they do come down, you're going to have more competition. So generally speaking, your conventional loans without incurring discount points are going to be pushing nearly 7%. Government loans are a little bit lower than that on your long-term fixed rate loans. But again, these are a little on the high side, but again, marry the house, state the rate. We can right size that rate when the rates come down. If you wait until later in the year, you may be paying 5% more for that house, which means your overall payment is the same as it would be today. So buy it at today's price. Don't buy it at later in the year's price.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's great time. We talked about that whole marry the house, date the rate. We've been saying it for almost about 6-7 months here now, but yeah. So little tidbit too, we got a new listing coming up. So those that are watching the thing, it'll head start on it. So we got a listing coming up 132nd Harrison Street, tri-level, listed at $250. I just had pictures of it today. So that will be live on the market on Friday. So if you have any questions or like to take a look at it, it's a great house. Corner lot. It's kind of a unique open layout, tri-level, as best as you can have an open layout with a tri-level, but vaulted ceilings open down into that room that's behind the garage there. But yeah, so it's fantastic. Excellent house for those kind of starter home type things there. We're also making a great rental house too for those real estate investors. So if you have any questions, give me a holler, 402-672-7670. If you need financing on that loan, give Russ a holler. 402-290-8936. And yeah, any questions, if you're thinking about buying a house this year, now is the time to sit down with Russ or myself from a finance standpoint or from a real estate standpoint of getting, the steps that you need to get your foot in the door, both literally and figuratively, and get that ball rolling down the right hill. So, but we're always here to help. Happy to answer questions. Like the old adage, no question's a stupid question. But yeah, we'd love to help you. And then also we got our Easter egg hunt coming up in less than a month on April 1st. No joke, right? But yeah, so we're gonna get busy stuffing eggs. Got about 2,000 eggs to stuff. So that's open to the public. So it's out of Walnut Grove Park. April 1st. Starts about 1 o'clock. The hunt will start about 1:15 or so once kids all get there and stuff. And literally it's one of those things that it says like 1 to 2 on our Facebook thing, but literally it's done in 10 minutes. I think last year we had over 200 and some kids, 250 kids. You blow the whistle and let them go, and the hunt is done in about 10 minutes. So it's awesome. It's fun to watch kids run out there and all that good stuff. So it's kind of like when a listing hits the market, it's kind of like the Easter egg hunt.
That's a lot of truth. There's a lot of truth there.
But yeah, absolutely. If you have any questions, give us a holler. Thanks for listening to us. Like, subscribe, all that kind of fun stuff on the social media. Always helps out. So, but cool. Anything you had to touch on, Russ?
Good stuff. Have a great week, everybody. Give Mark's team a call if you need anything.